Dr. Kalyani, Director General, CSIR, all distinguished directors, scientists, members of CSIR fraternity, both who are sitting here as well as who are listening to this talk from various laboratories. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be in front of you. I can tell you that combined your knowledge is about 1,000,000 times more than my knowledge. So I'm not a scientist. I'm an engineer and a practicing entrepreneur and a professional. So I value this opportunity. Thank you for inviting me. I have headlined my talk as contribution of science, technology, and research towards an innovation-driven economy. And the reason for this is that for many years, our economy was never innovation-driven. It has largely been driven by factors or a factor-driven economy. So whether it's low wages and wage arbitrage as one factor, or some other raw material resources that we have as another factor. And I can give you endless examples of how we have kind of traversed the wrong path for many years, running a factor-driven economy rather than an innovation-driven economy. It's only after Prime Minister Modi took over and he started this whole fantastic program of Make in India in December 2014 in Vigyan Bhavan, where all the ministries were present. Many of us from industry were present. It was a whole day program, and it was not giving lectures or giving talks, but we were told, we were divided in groups and told, please draw out a plan of how you can convert India into a better economy, a more innovation-driven economy, how you can create India to become an Atmanirbhar nation. That's when it all started. It's 11 years after that, and I think we have made tremendous progress. A lot of that is also a tribute to institutions like yourselves, industry, and everybody else who works in creating economic value in our country and in our system. So starting with that, what exactly is India at 2047? And where are the opportunities? You've heard a lot of television talks, right from the Honorable Prime Minister to everybody else, talking about we want to be a $30 trillion economy or a $25 trillion economy. All kinds of numbers have been floated around. But the problem is, we can float numbers around. We also have to float the roadmap to achieve those numbers. Because without a roadmap, numbers don't mean anything. Even if I'm running a simple organization or a company, we have numbers, we have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. Nowadays, because of all the technology tools that we have at our disposal, which we didn't have 30, 40 years ago, we are able to do a lot of prediction in terms of what's likely to happen. But then out comes the new president of the United States, and he floors all your predictions down the drain almost, because he changes the whole logic of reasoning. So we are living in this kind of world, and it's not easy. By no chance it is easy. But one thing that doesn't change is the laws of physics. They don't change. So for the scientific community, I think That is the greatest advantage you have, that the basic laws don't change, and therefore you can use that to create any amount of products, any amount of new things using knowledge. So let's start. So aspirations of India at 100, that is 2047. We are looking at, these are my numbers, so everybody can have his own numbers, but there is a logic behind these numbers. It was not just pulled out out of the sky. We had a lot of deliberation with all the industry partners and CII and FICCI and all kinds of people. And it is a combined, let's say, brain power and conclusion of all the senior partners in industry that this is what is likely to happen and this is what we want to aspire to be at 100, India at 100, which is 2047. So we are looking at a GDP of anywhere between 30 to 35 trillion dollars. Let's say 30 trillion. Let's not be very ambitious. We are currently at about 4 trillion. There are companies in the West who have a market capitalization of 4 trillion. Okay, NVIDIA, for example. And there are many other companies, a little less than 4 trillion, but they are there. So it is not absurd to assume that a country of 140 billion people can achieve a 30, 35 billion trillion dollar value of its economy in the next, 22 odd years. So it's like a 10x growth, 8x growth, something like that. One area which in this economy, which needs to grow at even a faster pace, is the manufacturing sector. It's the manufacturing sector that is going to create the jobs of our youth. That's our biggest advantage that we have in this country, our demographic advantage. There's no other country in the world that has an average age of about 29. India's average age is 29 today. I don't see too many 29-year-olds in this auditorium, but that's the average age. So my one recommendation to Dr. Kalai Selvi is that get some younger people. So if you look at, and you've heard the Honorable Prime Minister say many times in terms of vocal for local and zero defect, etc., and these are important themes. Whether you are in agriculture, you are in floriculture, you are in industrial products, you are in electronics, it doesn't matter which product you are. These are kind of values that we need to imbibe in our society if we want to become an industrialized nation with a large economy. It's extremely important. So which are the sectors that provide the largest economy in the next 22 to 25 years? The largest growth will come from the automotive sector. This sector will grow 20 times of what it is today. So if you are connected with the automotive sector in any which way, this will grow. At the same time, this will undergo a massive change of technology, going from IC engines, the ICE age, to the electric mobility age. And in electric mobility, there are all kinds of things. There is driverless, autonomous. I mean, you name the number of technologies that are involved in that. It's just amazing. So that is going to be a $2 trillion business. And in the manufacturing sector, you have to remember one thing. If a segment generates 100 as the revenue, the multiplier effect of that 100 is normally anywhere between 5 to 10 times in terms of all the other ancillary activities that get generated. The next business that's going to grow is going to be metal, steel. Not just steel, but metal. I put steel as a generic word, but it's going to be metals. Steel will be the major metal that will grow. China produces over 1.1 billion tons of steel, 80% of world steel production. In 1990, China and India were producing the same amount of steel. That is how many years ago? 35 years ago. We were making the same number of cars in 1990. We had the same GDP. And look at where they have gone in 35 years. Next will be textiles, pharma, medical devices, telecommunication. This is one area I think we have done extremely well compared to the rest of the world so far. And of course, unmanned systems. We call it drones in general, but all unmanned systems, air, land, underwater. And if you want to achieve this, then I think everybody has to work with a common purpose. You have to break silos. The only time I have seen silos being broken was 2020 when COVID hit us. It was amazing what our country could do at that time. Amazing how the Prime Minister created groups of people, broke all silos, and the output that we were able to produce in a few months. From a point where we didn't even have our own PPE kits, to a point in a few months where we were exporting PPE kits. So that's important. We are at an inflection point today, and the only thing that is going to take us forward is the science and technology ecosystem that our country has, which is CSIR being part of that ecosystem. Industry is another part of that ecosystem. The technical universities, colleges that we have are another part of that ecosystem. DRDO and the defense labs, that's another part of that ecosystem. So you have multiple ecosystems that are involved in taking the country forward in terms of science and technology. And this is extremely important for us. Of course, whether it's biological sciences, chemical sciences, physical sciences, engineering, information, you have these 9 themes that you have created in CSIR. I think they are spot on, and I think they are going to be the main focus where we will see growth coming in. You should have one aspiration as members of CSIR, as the labs of CSIR or each of these 9 directors. CSIR must contribute 1% per annum to the GDP of this country. Now, everything has to have a measured output. This should be the measured output of CSIR. And you do that for 22 years, on a cumulative basis, on a $4 trillion economy, 1% is roughly about 40 billion. On a $35 trillion economy, 1% is roughly about 350 billion. And you accumulate that, that's a lot of economic activity that you are going to enable get generated. So that should be the kind of target that one must put in CSIR and have the ability to measure this going forward. I'm very happy that Dr. Kalyani, when she took over, she brought the eye back into CSIR, because that was kind of missing at one point in time. And I think that's the right thing to do. I have visited a couple of CSIR labs. We work with some of the CSIR labs, especially NML in Jamshedpur, because it's connected with metals and metallurgy. And I can tell you that, as a nation, we should be proud of the scientists that we have. We should be proud of the work that they do. We should be proud of what they are capable of. But we should not be proud of the processes that we allow, we adapt them to work with. That's one big problem that we have. The processes that we have, I had a little talk with your Director General before this, your GFR process. I can't believe that a research institution should have somebody controlling how much money you're spending on what. I mean, you are selected to do research. I think you've already gone through a lot of processes in terms of selection. And your job is to produce physical research. Your job is to produce scientific research. Your job is to produce research that can be developed into products, patents. At least you're measuring patents now, which is a good thing. So this is one of the problems that we have where processes need to change. You also need to put a strong focus on the strategic side of what this country needs. Energy security, defense security, nutritional security. I know you're already working on many of these areas. But let me give you a couple of examples. There are products that we make. There was an article written by Mr. Sanyal, who was the economic advisor to the Prime Minister recently, I think in the Economic Times, where he said marine engines is a product which can throttle our economic growth because there are only few manufacturers of marine engines for large ships. And if they stop giving you those engines, you can't make ships. Whether ships for the Navy or ships for general transport. Now, as a country which is so large, with such a large coastline, you can't do without shipping. You can't do without the shipping industry, or you can't do without a big Navy. So, these are the kind of, and there are many such, I can list you products after products where we don't have Indian technology. And this is an area where technology needs to be created, developed, and provided for industry to mass produce. So the new approach that we need to undertake is allocate something for basic research, but allocate a larger amount for translational research. This is very, very important. We are in a phase of growth in this country, where unless research gets translated into science which can generate products, we are not going to be anywhere. And with everything that's buzzing around AI, and I don't want to talk about AI because that's the buzzword everywhere, and I think all of you know the good and bad of AI. But, it's at least something that levels the playing field in terms of knowledge for everyone. You can ask a question to any of the apps that are available. There are about more than a dozen apps, or maybe even more, on AI. And you get an answer. You may not be very educated, but if you have the ability to ask a question, you will get an answer. And that sometimes is frightening because people can get hooked into that and stop using their own brains. So there's the negative side of that. We also need to create our own intellectual property. I'm very happy that your Director General is focusing on patents, and I think that is important as far as India's growth prospects are concerned. So these are these are your 9 theme directorates that you have created, which are I think excellent. And as far as industry is concerned today, aerospace, electronics, these are areas where industry is investing in a big way. I mean, large part of the semiconductor mission, the electronics industry is all private sector investments coming up. The government of India has opened up the aerospace sector to the private sector. The new fifth generation fighter program is going to be produced by the private sector. And that also in 5 years. There is a lot of work that is going on in the area of chemicals, petrochemicals, earth, oceanography, water. We ourselves in our company are now producing unmanned systems to plot oceans. Not just to plot oceans, but also to be able to detect who is moving in our oceans. We call it whales, but you know what whales are. But it's a very new technology field. It's based on acoustics and acoustics technologies. And it's very different than normal fields. But we are doing it, there are other companies who are doing it. So there's a lot of work that is going on in this area. Healthcare is another area that's going to grow at a very fast pace because of the ability to use artificial intelligence in terms of collating data and predicting what is likely to happen to a person's health based on his data, his or her data. And then mining minerals, metals, and materials. And we suddenly have discovered that we don't have rare earth. So we are running around the world trying to find rare earth. Now, this is something we should have foreseen 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So how do we create models that can foresee what we are going to require to create an economy from a $4 trillion economy to a $30-35 trillion economy? What are the new materials that we need? What are the new technologies that we need? How do we create them? How do we develop them? How do we create models where we can work? Everything can't be done using research labs. Something has to be done using practical work. And that is something where I think industry, research organizations, technical universities, all of this has to come together to find solutions. The areas where I think industry is ready today to work with you is what I have shown in the yellow box. And I think any of those areas where I know some of your labs are working on many of these things, but I think industry is ready to work in a collaborative manner in these areas. There could be many other areas also. I've just listed a few of them. But clearly, advanced avionics, seekers, optronics, ability to have a seeking system that can go at a pixel level in a photograph, for example. I mean, these are kind of things where the need is required. It's also required for our security purposes. In terms of metals, right now we have been focusing largely on steel, a little bit of titanium, a little bit of aerospace type material. But I think as we move in the future, you're going to see many different kind of materials are going to be required, although in small quantity, but required to make a product. Part of them are rare earth type materials. Part of them are going to be materials that are designed. I was, uh, I'll come to that in some way here. Okay, this is your legacy. I don't have a better legacy than this, by the way, as an institution. I don't think any institution in India has the legacy of these founding fathers. Sir Arcot Ramaswamy is called the Arcot brothers. If you are from Madras, you will know. Very famous. And of course, Dr. Bhatnagar, the founder of India's science and research. So with this legacy, the expectation is extremely high from an institution like yours. I'll take you a little bit to some examples of how other countries build their industrial and economic powerhouse using industry. This is an example of the United States between 1939 and 1944. These three people, one of them, of course, is the President of the United States, Roosevelt. This was the beginning of the Second World War, as you know. William Connection was the President of General Motors. He was called by President Roosevelt to Washington and said, "You have to build me a military manufacturing machine. So you come and work for me in Washington at $1 a year salary." The guy at that time was getting a six-figure salary from General Motors. He was one of the most sought-after executives. And Henry Kaiser was a person in California building merchant ships, small merchant ships for shipping goods. So these two guys got together in Washington. They left their jobs, they came there, worked for President Roosevelt, got hold of many other people from different companies, and turned all the factories that were producing cars, refrigerators, steel, many other things into making aircrafts, ships, submarines, warships, artillery. This was all for the war machine, especially because Winston Churchill and the French president had made a request to President Roosevelt to say, if America doesn't supply us hardware, we will lose the war and Hitler will take over Europe. At that time it was not just Hitler, as you know, it was the axis of evil. Hitler, Mussolini, and the Emperor of Japan on one side. And they did this, and what they produced in 5 years. Okay, 324,000 fighter aircrafts. We have not been able to produce more than 8 fighter aircrafts in 5 years. $141 aircraft carriers. We take 15 to 16 years to make one aircraft carrier. 8 battleships. These are big battleships. If anybody has seen the movie The Battleship, there's a ship called Missouri in that. And so on and so on. 203 submarines. To do this in 5 years, and to do it with the private sector in the United States, converting factories making automobiles into making aircrafts, factories making Frigidaires into making all kinds of these kind of products, would have taken some tremendous amount of innovation, scientific thinking, research, and all kinds of stuff that goes into this. And I'm sure you have heard of the Project Manhattan that happened during that time. which were of course led by the scientific community of the US. So this is what is possible, and this was possible in the age when there was no internet, there was no uh, CNC machines, there was no computers, there was nothing. Everything had to be done by hand. Basic engineering. But they did this, and this is what made America a superpower. Nothing else. Similar things happen in other countries. In the United States, because of this, the US economy grew by about 13% a year. Quite amazing. After the war, the US put a reconstruction plan for Germany and Japan, as you know. And Germany grew by 7% a year, built a very large manufacturing-based economy based on machine tools, on cars. They were banned from making any military products, so they could not make any military products that they made during the World War. So they had to go completely to civilian products. Similarly, Japan, 1956 to 1973, a 9% growth rate for all those years, almost 17, 18 years continuously. And they focused on automotive, electronics, and created completely new industries out of nothing. They were also banned. Japan used to make aircrafts. Germany used to make aircraft. They used to make submarines. They used to make all the military hardware that the US used to make. But they were banned from making it. But they created completely new industries using a lot of science and research work that Japanese institutions were doing at that time and working with their universities. Of course, tremendous help from the governments and tremendous help from the US system. If you look at today, this is the kind of chaotic picture that we have today in front of us. We have a highly volatile world order. President Trump made the deal with the European Union, which is 23 countries, with Madame von der Leyen yesterday on a golf course in Scotland. But the deal was done. Okay? We are the only country that is left without a deal. Every other country has made a deal with the US. Now, you would never hear that a US president would make a deal with the head of the European Union on a golf course. But this is today's world. If you look at the new geopolitical alignments that are taking place, the rapid change that is being driven by AI, actually you ought to say more agentic AI rather than AI. But AI by itself really doesn't have much power. And the new rising tensions that are beginning to take place. Russia has become a major threat for Europe. NATO has now agreed to increase defense expenditure to 5% of GDP. Now, what social problems that brings to Europe, only time is going to tell us, because their current expenditure on defense was less than 1.5% of GDP. And if they have to spend another 3.5% more, something else is going to suffer. We have had our little battle with Pakistan, Operation Sindhu, very successful for the Indian armed forces and for our country. Now there's a war going on in Thailand with Cambodia. I mean, one would never have thought that Thailand and Cambodia would have a war. is a country that you normally go for a holiday. And, you know, there could be a new war coming up in Eastern Europe, in Azerbaijan, Armenia, I mean, all kinds of countries that are not very happy with each other. So we have a lot of rising tensions in the world. There are 31 countries in Africa that are at war today. I have not taken that example because it's a small war, a little warlords fighting with each other. This increasing military spending by NATO, now they are coming against a big wall of a problem. And the wall of a problem is they know what to do, what to make. They don't have the manpower to make it. They don't have the skills to make it. It's unbelievable that in Germany, they're running out of manpower. They're running out of skilled manpower. Same thing is happening in other European nations. So they want to now import Indian manpower to do these things. The same thing is beginning to happen in the United States. They want to increase their military output because they have supplied a lot of their inventory to Ukraine. This last 3 years war that is going on, and they have started reproducing, and they are finding it very difficult to produce. So we have all these kind of problems, but this can also become a big opportunity for us as a nation. If we can get our act together, if we can get our industry and R&D together, if we can start looking at futuristic products and start making them, this can become a huge opportunity for India in terms of our economic growth. You have also a lot of new geopolitical alignments taking place. Now with the European deal done with the US, I think things between US, Europe and NATO will all become much better. But that will now put Russia and China together, along with North Korea, Iran, and all those kind of problems. So there is a never-ending geopolitical crisis that is going to take place in the next, at least the next 4 years till President Trump is President of the United States. If you get somebody as good as him, then it will continue for a longer period of time. Where does that leave us in terms of where do we need to go? In today's world, a country's competitiveness, its geopolitical power is purely determined by its scientific knowledge, its technological knowledge, its innovation capacity and capability. It's nothing else. It's not defined anymore by wars, it is defined by how NVIDIA can design a new chip and make it a, $2 trillion value. That is how it's pure science and research. Now I think that's something we need to understand. So we need to stop working on things that don't have value. We need to start working on things that create high value. You have the ability today to think what future needs. And future is not next 50 years. Future is next 10 years, next 20 years. And we need to focus sharply our attention on what that next 20-year needs are. Some of them are defined. Some of them I'm sure you can define thinking through. But clearly, tech leadership, I think that's a barrier we will not be able to cross. So we shouldn't spend too much effort on creating tech leadership. We put effort to create tech capability, but no need to start competing with China and the US on tech leadership. The only way we will create tech leadership, if what President Trump is saying, that he doesn't want the tech companies to hire Indians, and those Indians come back here, then we might certainly get a bonanza. So let's see. AI, I think all of you know, is understanding we don't have to create AI, it's already there. We need to create applications. And if we are good at creating applications, all our young, skilled people, engineers, or STEM graduates, etc., that is the future. That can create tremendous value for India as an economy. In the area of materials, we clearly have gone to sleep for the last 50 odd years. We need to wake up and we need to understand the value of materials. For us, exporting iron ore was the best thing we could ever do. Not understanding that that same iron ore, if converted to a product, is 1,000 times more value that it can accrue to you than iron. And we are giving that iron ore to China, and they're converting it into products and selling it back to us. So we need to stop that. Rare earths, I don't know, I am not a geoscientist or geo specialist, but I'm sure a country as large as India, there will be rare earth somewhere. Just have to find ways to extract it, mine it efficiently, at the right cost. Again, that's your area of work. Green energy, I think we're doing a lot, but there is still a gap to be traversed. We still don't understand how to make the ingots very well and process them very well. The last point, we are the best in the world today in skilled resources. With the highest number of skilled resources available anywhere on this planet. Whether it's your research organizations, whether it's our industrial ecosystem, or whether it's country at large. We just have to learn how to use them in an effective manner. Two weeks ago, in the US Congress, that was 20th June, sorry, not 2 weeks ago, a month ago, the US Congress group of senators have outlined a plan called Freedom Force, the same thing that I talked about what happened in 1939 to 1944. It's called Senator Wicker's plan. How to bring innovation back into the US system. The US manufacturing system has also got hollowed out. I will talk in a few minutes about that. They have the same problem that we have. How to cut red tape. This is an American senator's notes in the US Congress. How to unleash American innovation. How to create competitive pressure. How to modernize defense budgeting. Defense budgeting means the way they spend money on defense is crazy. And how to enable decisive action. This is like the GFR issue that I was talking about. If you got a weight sitting on top of your head like that, making decisive action sometimes becomes difficult. The US Congress is working on this very quietly. What you hear today is the noise Trump makes all over the place. What you don't see is what is happening below that. So every country is going through this process of change, which we also need to go through. Just one simple example. The US built in 1950 a nuclear submarine in 5 years. How long have we taken to build a nuclear submarine? Any idea? It's going on for 25 years. We talk a lot about our iPhones, how much iPhones we export. What is our value addition in the iPhone? 3%. Now, it says 5 to 6%, that's the Economist magazine, but actually really it's about 3%. Is this good enough? It's not good enough. Now, why is this value addition so low? A simple product like an iPhone, I'm sure everybody has one. This has about 5,000 technologies in it that you have to master. And out of these 5,000 technologies, 20% of them keep changing every year. This is the world of Apple, and now many others, not just Apple. But another simple factor, there are now two big iPhone companies in Bangalore. One Foxconn and the second one is Tata Electronics. And there's one big one in Chennai belonging to Foxconn. That's where these three plants together make all the iPhones that India makes. Do you know iPhones are produced for 6 to 7 months in a year? The remaining 5 to 6 months, the factories undergo a complete change for the next model. All the machines have to be changed. All the processes have to be changed. Now this is where speed and agility come in. Ability to make changes in your system at that pace. And one country that has benefited a lot from it and learned a lot from it is China. And it's a book that's worth reading. It's called Apple in China. The title is The Capture of the World's Greatest Company. How China captured this company without investing any money. Today, Apple cannot produce a phone without China and Chinese companies. And 5,000 different technologies. Even an aircraft jet engine that is used in AMCA's 5th generation aircraft has only about 350 different technologies. This little thing has 5,000 technologies. And because they are now increasing the capacity of their chips, it needs more power. And when anything needs more power, it generates more heat. And they want to make the phone smaller and smaller. So they are now generating a new technology for heat extraction called ionic heat extraction. But this has been one of the biggest benefits for China. As Apple went bankrupt, Apple had no way to sell phones in the United States using their own technical processes. China came to their assistance, built up factories, built up processes, and that is how they captured Apple. They don't own Apple, but they captured Apple. It's a fantastic book to read. It's a very big book. We should be proud that we are producing light combat aircraft, but we should also not be very proud of the amount of time it has taken and the level of production. I don't know whether you heard the Chief Air Marshal A.P. Singh talk about this about 15 days ago. I was with him on the podium. And he was very vocal with what HAL is doing to production. These are your programs. I think somewhere we need to take this to production. The demand is great in the country. The civil aviation business is going to keep growing. And I think India should use this boom to create its own passenger aircraft industry. This is one of your products that is now going to go into production, I believe. It is very good. And we need to see more and more of CSIR products or technologies converted to products that really go into production. That is what is needed in India. Everybody knows about this. I think you played an amazing role in the COVID period, making a lot of equipment available. Even we never ever made a ventilator in our life, but we made ventilators during that period. These are some of our own product examples, okay? Of course, we work more with DRDO because defense equipment are largely designed and developed by them. This is one of the most advanced artillery gun designed by DRDO, produced by us. And the sad part of it is, I mean, it has gone through a huge number of trials, etc., for almost 6-7 years. But we now got an order from the Indian Army, it will get inducted next year. But last year, a European country bought guns from us, the same gun. So they were able to finish their whole process in 6 months, which takes our system 6 years. And Europeans are not going to shortcut anything. Is another product that we have designed. It's the first time anybody has been able to make an artillery platform on a 4x4 truck. Artillery guns normally have a huge force that comes as recoil forces. So 4x4 trucks can't take it, but we have designed this. Again, Indian Army wants this, but there is no procedure available in the MOD to make this happen. But we exported 72 numbers to Europe. The idea of showing you all this is, we are in a quandary on product versus procedure. And it's all connected with this GFR and all this heavy weight that is put on your shoulders to lift. And we've got to find a way to get out of this. Otherwise, progress here is not going to be as fast as we want it to. So what do we want India at 2047? We want to be a products nation. We should have a product mindset. The Chinese have it now. Chinese used to be a service nation just 25, 30 years ago. They've become a products nation. Just look at their automotive industry. They've beaten Germany completely out. The German automobile industry, which was the best in the world, is gone, finished. So we need to create capabilities, procedures, processes, where we can create scale, we can create competitiveness, and we can create right to win in the global markets. Dr. Kalyani, when she introduced me and our company, she talked about Google. Well, let me tell you something else also. We started as a forging company, making components for the automotive industry. Today, we have pivoted and we make artillery guns, we make unmanned systems, we make drones, we make electronics, we are making servers for data centers. We do all kinds of things which they never even dreamt of 3, 4 years ago. And we found that it's not so difficult. Engineers have a mindset, they can figure out how to make different things, how to design different products. And wherever we don't know, we come to people like you, your labs, DRDO labs, we go to IITs. We have tremendous collaborative effort that goes on. We have almost 500 people working, engineers working in our tech centers. Most of them are MTechs or some PhDs. And the speed at which we can make things happen is unbelievable. So in this world today and going forward is going to be control of your intellectual property. Why we are able to export guns? Because we own the intellectual property. Nobody else can export guns because they don't own intellectual property. They get it from somewhere else. As simple as that. And we can do it at speed. I wanted to mention this. We are India's first multinational company, by the way. First company to become multinational in India. So I just want to end my little talk. I don't know whether I've taken more time. But I just want to say these 4 things. Let's make this country a products nation and an economy that's driven by innovation. Innovations, research, which comes out of our own system. And if we can do this, I think there is nothing stopping us from achieving the goal that the Honorable Prime Minister set, and which has almost become an aspiration for every Indian today. India at 100. So let's make a collective resolve to reclaim our glorious legacy and position India at the forefront of the emerging digital and AI age. Thank you. Jai Hind.